Seats. Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Want to adopt the agenda, but I also want to remove item 6A. So I have a motion to do that. I'd appreciate it. Moved by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Commissioner Romano. Please vote. Thank you very much. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public? Anyone from the public? No one from the public is there. We'll close public participation. Item 5 is presentations. Ethics Board, their 2017 annual report. Please welcome, and floor is yours.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Macomb County Board of Commissioners. My name is Dory Vasquez Nolan, and I currently serve as the Vice Chair of the Macomb County Ethics Board. Unfortunately, our Chair, Dr. Amboyer, was not able to be here today, but he does send his regards. On behalf of the Ethics Board, I'd first like to thank the Board of Commissioners and Executive Mark Hackle for the opportunity to serve Macomb County as members of the Ethics Board. We're very grateful for the role that we play to educate our public servants on the ethics ordinance and the critical importance of upholding the public trust in our county's government. As you know, the Macomb County Ethics Board was created by Article 2 of the Home Rule Charter of Macomb County in 2009 to ensure that all public servants, including elected officials, appointed officials, and employees and vendors doing business with Macomb County, comply with all ordinances and policies of county government. Public servants are required to be independent, impartial, fair in their judgment and actions, and use their public office for public good and not for public gain. In order to prevent the incidents of unethical behaviors and to increase the public trust in county government, the Macomb County Ethics Board is responsible for preparing educational materials regarding applicable ethics standards, conduct training programs for public employees, render advisory opinions upon request, develop and implement rules of procedure to receive complaints, and investigate allegations to render determinations regarding complaints. We have submitted the 2017 annual report as required by the county charter. During 2017, our ethics board held 10 meetings, received 19 inquiries, 3 requests for advisory opinions, and 3 complaints of possible ethics ordinance violations. 2 hearings were held in April and in May 2017, resulting in 1 dismissal of an ethics complaint and a decision citing 2 violations of the Macomb County Ethics Ordinance. The version of the annual report that I have printed that was shared with our committee, I'm not sure if Dr. Amboyer may have corrected, but on page 8, I think that some dates might be wrong. Do you guys have like October 2015 instead of 17? Or was that corrected on your version?
October 18th.
Okay, good. Oh, 18th? October 18th, 2017? 2015? Yeah. We will make the corrections on this, and then below it mentions November 15th, 2017. It says at the minutes of the meeting, but it references 2016 there. And then finally, the December meeting, of course, was 2017, not 2016. So we apologize for those errors. I'll make sure that they're corrected, and we'll get you a revised version of our annual report. Over the past year, our ethics board has wrestled with changes to the ethics ordinance that were enacted in 2016 and disappointed that our input or feedback was not sought during the process. It was also discouraging to us to learn that the online training that we developed for Macomb County public servants, contractors, and appointees was made obsolete by the new ordinance. We continue to struggle with many aspects of the new ordinance as it relates to things like definitions, confidentiality, and our rules of procedure. We are very grateful to Chairman Smith for being receptive to our suggestions for possible modifications to the current ordinance, and hope that some changes will be made to clarify our role and responsibilities and to create an ordinance that is easier for all to understand. As members of the Macomb County Ethics Board, we do understand that our role is not to legislate, but to uphold the ordinance as written. We'd greatly appreciate your guidance in helping us carry out our duties responsibly as members of the Ethics Board and as prescribed by the ordinance. We do appreciate your confidence in our board and your support. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you. I need a motion to receive and file the report. Moved by Commissioner Sauger, supported by Commissioner Romano. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your report and your presentation. It's very unlikely your budget will ever end up being cut because because you guys are volunteers and do such an amazing amount of time and volunteer work into this. So that is greatly appreciated. I guess my basic question, it may not be specific to this report, and that is, of the complaints that you receive, and I see the chart on page 4 showing the number of complaints or inquiries received, and the complaints filed, what % of those end up in being heard as part of a formal meeting of the ethics board, or what % are followed up on and are part of a process for evaluating them?
All of the complaints are discussed among the ethics board at our next regularly scheduled meetings after they are received. Whether or not they rise to the level that would require a hearing, as you can see in 2017, was not that great. The following, in the months that followed, but that were not included in this year's report, we had an increase in the number of complaints and the number of ones that we felt were credible, well, that had enough meat there, I guess, that we actually discussed, whether or not to have a hearing, to ask for more information, to ask for actual responses from the respondent, more information from the complainant. This year, the previous year, 2017, was a little bit less than what we've done in the following year.
And is the determination whether to hold a hearing on a complaint based on a written set of criteria that's applied to that complaint, or is it dependent upon the best judgment of the members?
It's definitely based on interpretation of the ordinance and discussion and a vote of the members of the ethics board, whether or not we feel that there's criteria or whatever to proceed with a hearing and move forward on a complaint or dismiss it.
So suppose this would be in the ordinance, I should probably pull up the ordinance and look at it. But so there is there though in the ordinance, to your knowledge, a written set of criteria that the board is supposed to use when looking at a complaint and determining whether or not to bring it to a hearing?
We used to have that with our rules of procedure that were tied in with the previous ethics ordinance. Okay. To my understanding, those were created by the first ethics board, that was before I was serving, and then approved by the County Board of Commissioners. With the new ordinance, we have not formally had new rules of procedure to reflect those changes yet. So we basically still use the old rules of procedure and try to make sure that we are not violating anything as it relates to the new ordinance.
Okay. Okay, again, thank you so much for the work that you do. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. It was over 2.5 years ago that ordinance was changed, and Dr. Ambler came 2 years ago to a budget hearing and expressed his disappointment. We received correspondence with regard to your disappointment and his disappointment. And then he came and gave a report more recently and expressed his disappointment, but also mentioned that we are trying to work with the Ethics Board to make it more palatable for everybody. Now you've come before us today, and even though we are trying to work with you on the ordinance, you've again expressed your disappointment with what happened. Are we going to reach a point where we can have a presentation where you are no longer disappointed since we are now working with you?
I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Motion's been made in support of receive and file. Please vote. There's no one's else signing. Please vote. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
All right, number 6B, budget on the capital plan. East Pete, Libis Street Pump Station upgrade. Glenn?
The purchasing department solicited bids for the Elizabeth Street lift station upgrade. 1,434 vendors were actually notified of this solicitation. 96 vendors actually viewed the documents, and 2 sealed bids were received. The lift station essentially is used to pump sewage from a lower level to a higher level, and that is when you have the absence of sufficient elevation for a gravity flow. Sewage enters the pit. When the sewage gets to a certain level, the pumps are activated, and it forces the sewage to the Mount Clemens system. The buildings on the Elizabeth lift station are the jail, Martha Teaberry, and the Mount Clemens Health Center. The scope of this project is to replace 4 of the isolation valves. We have 2 valves on the suction end of the line and also 2 valves on the discharge side of the line. We are also talking about installing an 8-inch isolation valve on the pressurized line. This line runs from the sanitary lift station and goes about 2,200 feet to the Mount Clemens gravity line. The 8-inch installation of this isolation valve requires a manhole to be installed. And we also wanted to put in a T valve. And the reason for this T valve, we can create a bypass. So in an emergency, we can actually reroute the sewage flow, and we can divert it or bypass it to this pressurized line. We're therefore requesting authorization to issue a PO to Fontana Construction, which was the low bidder, in the amount of $96,590. And I also like to add they are a Macomb County vendor, which is what we like to see.
Okay, are there any questions? Commissioner Carabelli? I can't use the list from here, so I am going to use my best ability. Okay, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. We have to do a budget amendment and take out a fund balance. Was this a project that you originally had planned in the capital outlay for 2018?
We have a line item in the 2018 capital plan, which is a contingency where we have plumbing and underground utilities. So it was in the 2018 plan.
But what's in front of us is a budget amendment from the fund balance, isn't it?
I spoke to Steve Schmiegel this morning, and maybe I'll get the wording incorrect, but he has indicated that the funding should come from the fund balance of the general fund as a transfer to the capital plan.
That's what I'm saying is we're taking money from the fund balance of the general fund and putting it into the capital fund to do this project.
That's correct.
Okay. Was this project something you had already planned to do in the year 2018 if you went back last year?
Well, what we do, we put in a contingency for the unknowns. And part of this project is the replacement of 4 isolation valves. What we're finding is that they're not holding, so we can't isolate a line. So it makes it difficult or almost impossible to replace the pumps, maintain the pumps, work on the controls.
Okay, so this is not a project that this money is not something you anticipated doing this year. When we created this year's capital fund, these are unknowns.
Yes.
Okay, so the unknowns in this project, are they things that you had slated to do within the next 5 years in the 5-year plan now?
Certainly within that contingency. We've been watching the lift stations along with the pumps. We have 2 major lift stations.
Well, you're using the word contingency, and I'm going by the 5-year capital outlay budget. So if you had a contingency, we wouldn't be doing a budget amendment, because we're doing a budget amendment to put money in for you to do this. Do you understand what I'm saying?
I thought the issue was that the capital plan wasn't funded, and I'm trying to get funding to do the project.
No, oh,
Point of information, the capital plan wasn't funded, but there was money set aside for 18's capital projects, which we've already exceeded that amount of
Right.
projects in money from from the anticipated capital projects, which was left in general fund. So you understand
so
what I'm saying.
we had money that we didn't have it in a restricted line item, but we had money that the exec's office wanted to use for capital outlay projects. We kept it in the fund balance, but we said this will be used for capital outlay projects. And we exceeded that amount. We slowly moved the money in. So I was just trying to figure out if this was something you planned on doing in 2018, and because we depleted that money on emergencies of other kind, that's why you needed to come and ask us for the money. And I understand what you're thinking. You were thinking, well, we didn't put anything in for capital outlay, so you had to come to us for each and everything. So that kind of negates all of my questioning, because she's coming from a different understanding than I am. But the reason I asked about the 5-year projection is, if you did not plan on doing that this year, but you did maybe within the next 5 years, then that 5-year out out budget somewhere would drop in number because we're doing it today. That was my thought process on that, but that I think is for Steve instead of for you. Okay.
I hope so.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We have Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair, and you are Chair now, right?
For a moment.
Yeah. You know, we have, I had the opportunity to talk to Lynn just before the meeting starting, but we as commissioners often see bids coming back, and 300 letters were sent out, 600 letters were sent out, and we get 200 responses, and all of a sudden we only get 2 or 3 bids. And my question was, what's the big disparity here that vendors that are bidding, why do we only have 2 or 3 out of 60 of them that download? And after Lynn explained it to me, and I will explain it to you, hopefully the way she did to me, sometimes these vendors or contractors download it so that they know if they have a job similar to this, they have a number to start working at that our people put together for them, and they can utilize that as a worksheet when they have to go outside for some other bidding other than ours. So they're using us, and I was concerned that out of 442 documents that were downloaded, we only got 2 sealed bids. And I was looking over some of the criteria for the bids, and it isn't that difficult, so I thought to myself, it makes a lot of sense, because I've often wondered, why do they download and not make a bid on it? Well, they're using us as the skateboard, so to speak, to make sure that when they do bid, they're within the parameters of what we suggest that it should be billed at. Just a point of information. Thank you, Chair.
And if I could add, a lot of times, maybe paving is a classic example. It's the vendor that actually signs up to be alerted to certain categories. So if you had a paving project, people on that list aren't necessarily paving contractors. They may be striping contractors. So they want to know who's bidding this project because they want to get their price and be a sub on the project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, I told you this before, and I'll say it again in front of everybody. I don't know, I don't understand, I do understand why you're doing this, but I think this should be out of Public Works. And if anything, that this, even the pump station and so on and so forth, all this ought to be coming out of Public Works. And I understand why you're doing it, because it's on our property, but I just assume charge Public Works with $95,000 rather than us. Thank you.
Depends which pocket it comes out of, Andre.
Yeah, I understand.
Commissioner Leland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn, good to see you. I'm looking at the bid tabulation, and there's the two bidders, Z Contracts and Fontana, which we're about to approve here, hopefully. And there is something called acknowledgement of the addenda. What is
Yes.
one? Fontana said no, and Z Contractors says yes. Can you explain that?
Yes, often when a bid is out there on the Minden site, you might have a clarification, so they'll issue an addendum. I did speak to purchasing about this, and the addendum for this actual project was, it was a mandatory pre-bid. We want them to clearly understand what they're dealing with. And there's a lot of question and answers that happened during that pre-bid meeting. And that's what addendum 1 was the question and answers. I talked to purchasing, and, certainly I don't want to throw away, a little over $44,000. And certainly the county has the ability to waive any irregularities in a bid. So they felt that it was in the best interest of the county that we would be able to go use the low bidder.
Okay, so Fontana did not acknowledge the addenda, but we still feel comfortable
Yes,
with them
Yes.
at the price that they have, that they're going to be able to accomplish our needs.
yes, he did later state he has no issue with his
Okay.
price and has a full understanding.
Full understanding what
Yes.
has to be done.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you, Lynn.
Thank you, Commissioner Smith. Chairman Smith.
Thank you. So this point is really not for you, but it's a point that Commissioner Kleinfeld brought up in our budget hearings. There's no emergency fund. So here's a project that should have been either on the list, or it should bump a project that's on the list, because we set up a number for capital projects, and we can't keep going over that number. And yet we keep approving numbers over that number. And instead of having an emergency fund and a dedicated capital project fund, we have a capital project fund. Now, worst case scenario, something should get bumped off the list, and this obviously needs to be done. So this is important stuff, right? So we're not talking about should this or shouldn't it be done, but the funding of it is another question, and how we do our capital projects. So, I would hope that we carry on our plan of, policies and different things like that into next year, and go with what Commissioner Kleinfeld and we've all discussed about having an emergency fund, and also having if we get over that emergency fund, we have a policy that says, sorry, if you have an emergency and we don't have any emergency funds left, we bump a project off the capital projects list, because as we've all noted, it never ends sometimes, and we get recommendations for a certain amount of capital projects, but it almost always seems to get to be exceeded. So these are things we have to look at. I see Commissioner Carabelli's up next, so I'll ask this and tee it off for him, that I think we need to look at Public Works and see if there's any, funding grant-wise, district drainage districts. I'm not really sure, and I don't know that, but with what one of the commissioners said, this does seem like something that might be better off coming out of a Public Works fund that maybe is set aside for this. And Commissioner Carabelli's been really good at finding a lot of funds that we didn't think we had to cover these things. So I hope that, and we do have some time before finance to ask those questions, but I'm good with that. Thanks.
Well, we can postpone this, it's not needed.
No,
don't
this
need it
is moving to finance.
Well, we can move it, but we don't have to approve it. We
Right.
can wait until we get the information. There's no demand, there's no rush, right? It's been waiting for a while, right?
Yes, I mean, certainly we want to get this project done as soon as we can, by the end of the year.
How long have you known that we had this problem?
Pardon?
I've just had to step out, so how long have we known we had this issue?
Our plumber foreman was actually taking a look at the valves. And they're old valves, and they're starting to not hold back the sewage. And we figured it's time to do it. So, and then we wanted to make some upgrades by having that bypass capability to reroute the sewage.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Carabelli.
Point of information, I'm sorry, Don, but you asked how long have we known about it, and you told her how we found out about it, but we didn't get the answer of how long we've known about it.
Okay.
If you don't mind, Lynn,
Yeah.
do you know how long we've known that this is a project that needs to be tackled?
How long has it been leaking sewage?
I'd say it's not that it's leaking sewage. It's not sewage leaking in the green belt or anything like that. It's in order to pull the pumps, we have to isolate the line. When you ask how long we've known, I mean, it went out for bids a couple months ago.
Okay, all right. Okay. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. God bless you. Chair Smith did tee it up. I know that the Department of the Drain Office, Public Works, is a general fund liability to the county. With that said, there are districts specifically set up to pay for certain projects. I know this is a county facility, county-owned, but the cost of operation is with that district. So, for example, the unfortunate collapse that we had before, that district is paying for that, not people that are not part of that district. So this pump system, this building, this facility is to be paid for by the users of that. Not the county-wide, but the users of that.
We are the only users on this lift station
So that
and
list.
this line.
Okay, and it's just the county facilities?
Yes.
There's not one other,
There's not one other.
that shoots that
entity
out
on
the
there.
window. Thank you very much.
Nice try.
We have no other speakers. I need a motion to forward this to finance. Motion by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Drulette. Please vote. Very good. Thank you. That motion's approved. Item 6C, a purchase order for Fontana Construction. Lynn? Motion by Duge, supported by Sauger. Anyone have any questions on this item? Seeing none, please vote. Motion passes. Item 7 is correspondence. There are no there's a correspondence information sheet on the Mountain Road, 10 Mile Road project. We'll need a motion to receive and file. Moved by Duge, supported by Commissioner Sauger.
Just a comment, Mr. Chair, on this, if I may, for 1 second. So
You have
Mound Road.
5 minutes.
5 minutes, no, I don't need 5. So Mound Road in Sterling Heights from 14 to 18, that looks like that is being concluded very soon. And obviously here in Warren, from 10 to 12 Mile Road, we'll be concluding also with before the snow season starts, I guess. And this is just according to my knowledge from Executive Hackle when he had that press conference at the gazebo a few months back to talk about the Big Mound Road project, the $200 million project, and the grant from Congress for $100 million. When he had the board up there showing all the construction on Mound, this is it, Mound Road, after this season is done, until they start that $200 million project, which I think is a few years away. So I just wanted to share that all with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Romano.
Just a point of information, Mark Vanderpool, city manager, Tuesday night's council meeting, elaborated on that by stating, hopefully, in anticipation, that all major construction road-wise in Sterling Heights is going to be done by the end of the year. And he mentioned Mound Road, he mentioned a few other the roads that they anticipate, if the weather holds, It'll all be done. Hallelujah, there is a God. Thank you.
I've been trying to avoid that area. Thank you. Any other questions on this piece of correspondence? Motion's been made and supported. Please vote. Thank you very much. That motion passes. Proclamations. Yes. Proclamation A of proclamation for Kathy Smith, the Macomb County Clerk, made by Commissioner Leonetti. Motion to send this to full board. Need a motion, Commissioner Leonetti, supported by Commissioner Lucido. Anyone want to say anything? Go ahead, please.
Hey, this is one of those cool proclamations that all of you have been witness to, so I don't think there's much I need to say. So, thanks.
Oh, well, thank you. Tell us, you're just trying to delay for time. You're stalling. Please vote. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to add to this because in the future, when people are looking back at the history of Macomb County politics and they look at this resolution, they're going to read it and think it's nice, but they won't really know what happened here. And they won't know the context of what happened here. And while I believe I commend the commissioner for introducing this resolution and obviously very enthusiastically support it, I wish there was a way of telling Ms. Smith the true scope of our appreciation for what she did. Because, you know, the proclamation can't really go into the details of what she had to step into and what she had to deal with and what she had to fix. And I think we should at least note those things verbally along with the very nice proclamation that we're sending her as well. So I wish you were here, and I hope that we do have a chance to tell her, either individually or as a group, the broader scope of our appreciation.
We can request her presence when Commissioner Leonetti will present it to her before the
I
full
would,
board.
because this is an important token, but you know there is more, and I think we all know what it is. So
Maybe we
thank
could
you.
bring the former clerk in for added comfort, for added humor. For some compare and contrast. All right, thank you very much. Everyone's, Commissioner Sauger, what we got?
I just want to say, why would you want to open up a can of old fruit? Period.
Easy now. Thank you very much. Motion's been made and passed. Thank you very much. Item 9 is new business. Any new business to come before the committee? Any new business? No new business. Public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public? Seeing no one from the public, we'll close that. Need a motion to adjourn. Commissioner Dujay, supported by Commissioner Gillette. Please vote.
I support that.
Motion passes. Have a good evening.
I'm sitting here now. I'm not supporting this motion to adjourn. I don't agree with this at all.
I'll go back and reserve my